The message lit up my phone as I watched them drive away through the nursing home window. My hands were still trembling from the shock of being forced into this place like some senile old fool. The message was from Bridget, my treacherous daughter-in-law, and she had sent it before even leaving the parking lot. "Thanks for the inheritance, old man. The lake house and our 15 million are ours now." In that sterile room that smelled of disinfectant and despair, I sat doing nothing, rereading those words over and over. She thought she had won. She believed I was a confused old man who didn't understand technology and couldn't fight back. But Bridget had made a critical mistake. She didn't know that 3 months ago, I had spent thousands of dollars installing cameras in every room of my house, and that those cameras had recorded every conversation, every fake document, every scheme she and my son had plotted. My name is Walter Drummond. I'm 72 years old, and until 3 hours ago, I had lived alone in the house I owned for 45 years. I worked for 40 years as the head loan officer at Brookfield Savings Bank. I'd seen every kind of scam greed could inspire, every desperate grab for money, every con, every trick, but I never thought I'd see it from my own son and his vicious wife. Craig is now 41. Works at an accounting firm downtown. He used to be a good kid. Every Sunday after church, he'd visit me with his kids. Then, 5 years ago, he married Bridget. She's 38, a real estate agent with manicured nails and a cold smile. From the moment I saw her, I knew she was the devil. The way she looked at my house, at Eleanor's jewelry, at the investment statements I accidentally left on my desk that afternoon. She saw treasure chests where a family should be. My lawyer, Vernon Blackstone, warned me 6 months ago. "Walter, be careful. I've seen this before. Children getting impatient about inheritances." Vernon and I have been friends for 30 years. He's 65, sharp as a razor, and has handled all my legal affairs since Eleanor and I bought the house. I should have listened to him more closely, but you don't expect your own blood to stab you in the back. You don't expect the son you taught to ride a bike, walked down the aisle at his first wedding, and held as he cried when his mother died, to sign the papers to lock you away in a nursing home you don't need. You don't expect to see your daughter-in-law texting about stealing your life savings before she even gets home. What Bridget didn't know was that I had hidden everything. What she didn't know was that her forged power of attorney would never stand against the real documents I had entrusted to Vernon years ago. What she didn't know was that I had already called Vernon from the landline of this prison they stuck me in. When Vernon saw those recordings, when he heard her own voice planning to end my life, he said something that changed everything. "Walter, they're not just going to lose," he said. "They're going to prison, and they'll wish they'd never laid a finger on you." This is the story of how greed revealed my family's true face, the story of how my son chose money over his father, and how sometimes the best revenge isn't just winning, but showing everyone exactly what kind of people they really are. My home in Brookfield sits on 5 acres of land, Eleanor, and I bought in 1979. Back then, $42,000 seemed like all the money in the world for a young bank clerk and his schoolteacher wife. Over the years, I renovated every inch of that house with my own hands. The porches where Eleanor drank her morning coffee. The kitchen I remodeled for our 25th anniversary. The guest cabin I turned into my workshop after retirement. Every board, every nail, every coat of paint carries a memory. Eleanor passed away 3 years ago from cancer. From diagnosis to goodbye, we had 6 months, and I promised to make every minute count. Craig came by more often in those last weeks, bringing his kids, Taylor and Madison. They were still young then and would sit by their grandmother, reading her favorite books to comfort her. Bridget, on the other hand, would stop by for an hour on Sundays, always on her phone, always in a hurry, like she had somewhere better to be. After Eleanor died, the house felt both too big and too small at once. Too big for just me to wander in, too small to hold all the life we'd lived in it. But it was home. I knew every creak in the floorboards, every stubborn window that needed an extra push, every perfect spot where the afternoon sun hit the living room just right. I kept myself busy. At 72, I was still sharp as ever. Every morning I reviewed my investment portfolios. The $15 million I'd built through careful saving, smart investing, and Eleanor's life insurance after her passing. I served on the board of the local library, played golf every Thursday with Vernon and old banking colleagues, and rebuilt the backyard shed just to prove I could still handle power tools. After Eleanor died, Craig would still bring the kids every Sunday. We had a routine. I'd make my famous blueberry pancakes, her recipe, and we'd spend the day working on model trains in the workshop or fishing at our lake house in Winniswam. That lake house was my pride. I bought it in 1985 with my first big bonus, 3 bedrooms, a private dock, and the best sunset view in New Hampshire. Then, 5 years ago, Craig married Bridget. His first wife, Patricia, was a kindergarten teacher like Eleanor. Craig divorced her after having an affair with Bridget, who worked in the building next to his accounting firm. I should have seen the warning signs then. A man who betrays his family once can do it again. Sunday visits turned into monthly ones, then every other month. And when they did come, everything felt different. Bridget would walk around the house like she was taking inventory. She'd pick up Eleanor's Hummel figurines, turn them over to check the marks, and put them back with a small nod. Once, I caught her photographing the inside of Eleanor's jewelry box, I said. When I asked her, she said, "I was just sending a photo to my sister. She loves vintage pieces." Craig had changed too. He seemed nervous around me, always glancing at Bridget before answering my questions. When I asked about his job, he talked about difficult clients and tight budgets. When I offered to help with his finances, Bridget would cut in. "We're fine, Walter. Not everyone needs a fortune to be happy," she'd say. The way she said my name sharp and cold, like an accusation. The way she said fortune, as if savoring the word 6 months ago. Things got even stranger. Bridget started telling people she'd noticed signs of dementia in me. My neighbor of 30 years, Mrs. Henderson, told me Bridget had said I'd started forgetting to pay bills. It was all a fabrication. Bridget told Craig's pastor that I had gotten lost driving home from the grocery store. It never happened. She was building a narrative, laying the groundwork, and I was too trusting to see it. Vernon noticed before I did. While reviewing my will, we were updating the beneficiary sections when he said something that stuck with me. "Walter, make sure your power of attorney documents are airtight. I've seen too many cases lately where family members try to seize assets before their time." I laughed it off. Craig would never do that. He was my son. He cried at his mother's funeral. He held my hand as we scattered her ashes by the lake. He could be weak, especially where Bridget was concerned, but he wasn't cruel. I was wrong. The comfortable life I had built through 40 years of hard work, the security I had earned, the house where I raised my family and lost my wife, all of it was about to be stolen by the 2 people who were supposed to protect me, and they would do it with smiles on their faces, insisting it was for my own good. That Tuesday morning started like any other. I was making my coffee in the kitchen when I heard car doors slam outside. Looking out the window, I saw Craig's silver BMW. Next to it was a van marked Sunset Garden Senior Living. 2 men in uniforms got out, and Bridget was directing them toward the front door. The doorbell rang. I didn't hesitate to answer. When I opened it, Craig couldn't look me in the eye. "Dad, we need to talk," he said, staring at my shoulder. "Then talk," I replied, not moving from the doorway, but they didn't come inside. They stayed outside. Bridget stepped forward, looking at me as if she were about to say, "We're doing this for your own good." She pulled out a thick folder. "Walter, you've been confused lately. You've been showing signs of dementia. Dr. Nathaniel Crow evaluated you and determined you're no longer fit to live alone," she said. "My doctor is Dr. Morrison," I said. "I've never heard of him," Bridget replied coldly. Craig cut in, his voice trembling. "Dad, you fell last month. You didn't tell us." I tripped over the garden hose and bruised my knee. "What does that have to do with dementia?" I said. Bridget's face showed that familiar smile, one that never reached her eyes, the kind of smile that belonged to someone who saw wealth behind every word. She made up a rumor, supposedly from our neighbor Mrs. Henderson. "She said you seemed confused at the grocery store last week," Bridget claimed. But Mrs. Henderson had been in Florida visiting her daughter that whole month. I looked at Craig. He had already fallen in line with her. His eyes darted away. Inside, I asked myself, why? Bridget raised her hand. "Stop making this harder than it needs to be. You're coming to Sunset Gardens. We're doing this for your own good." She showed the papers and grabbed my landline phone from my hand. Bridget didn't even bother pretending Vernon would protect me. When I reached for my cell phone, she quickly caught my wrist. "You don't know what you're doing," she said, snatching the phone from me. The orderlies, one young, one older, approached. The older one, with years of exhaustion in his face, said softly, "It's a tough job, sir. Your family made the arrangements." He glanced at the file. The papers looked official enough. Seals, signatures. However fake they were, the staff only needed to see that the documents existed. "All right." The man finally said. Neighbors had come out. Mrs. Chen across the street was recording with her phone. Tom Bradley had stopped mowing his lawn. Everyone on the street was watching. They guided me toward the van, one of them holding my arm gently, like I was a reluctant prisoner. Craig rode in the same van. Bridget followed behind in her car. During the ride, Craig sat in silence while I stared out the window. Every corner, every tree reminded me of Eleanor's laughter. Every now and then Craig whispered, "It's for your own good, Dad." I asked, "Would your mother have wanted this?" "Mom's gone, Dad. It's been 3 years," he said, his voice breaking. When we arrived at Sunset Gardens, everything was done by the book. Forms, signatures, confiscated belongings. They placed me in a bed, labeled my drawers. While logging my intake, a nurse murmured, "If this isn't permanent, your paperwork will be adjusted later." Bridget, acting like she had parental authority, laughed as she texted someone on her phone. Her gestures were too relaxed, too pleased. They brought me to my room. Cream-colored walls, a single bed, a window overlooking the parking lot. A plastic, framed bed, a small nightstand, a phone mounted on the wall. The line was probably for outside calls. I sat there for a full hour. The place was spotless, the air thick with disinfectant. But I didn't give up. Determination still burned inside me. I still had a plan. The landline was still there. I picked it up. I knew the number by heart, Vernon's direct line. My voice trembled like a sob, but I dialed it. "Office of Vernon Blackstone," came the voice before the machine could pick up. "Vernon, it's Walter," I said. "They brought me to Sunset Gardens. Craig and Bridget locked me up this morning, claiming dementia." "My God, Walter, I'm watching right now," Vernon said. His voice now filled, not with cold professionalism, but fury. "Bridget's in your living room. With someone. Who's that man?" "Most likely her fake doctor, Dr. Nathaniel Crow," I said, trying to steady my voice though. Adrenaline surged inside me. "Vernon, here's what matters. Keep reviewing those camera recordings, but focus especially on last Thursday. Around 2 p.m., I was at golf. Bridget was home then. Show her, and the world, that she wasn't just after my money. She was after my home, my memories, my dignity." "Understood," Vernon replied, his voice firm again. "If that's not enough, I'll track down whoever notarized that fake power of attorney. I'll dig into Craig's accounting firm too. This is an attempted heist, Walter. And you didn't give them what they wanted. You never will." Important note, Vernon already had my genuine power of attorney documents officially filed years ago, which meant any forged paperwork Bridget presented would be instantly void. However, to launch the legal process and expose their intent, the surveillance footage was priceless. They left me there. Craig couldn't meet my eyes. "I'll visit you, Dad," he muttered. Bridget, turning away, scrolling on her phone as if I didn't exist, said, "Come on, Craig, we're wasting time. Real estate doesn't wait." This was my first hour in the nursing home. Beige walls, a bed with plastic rails, and a window overlooking the parking lot. But this cell, for me, was not a prison. It was a command center. My situation was this: legal status. The real power of attorney is with me and Vernon. Theirs is forged evidence. Every conversation and action in the house is backed up to the cloud with audio and video recordings. Triggering moment, Bridget lied using the name Dr. Crow, and the footage Vernon was watching at that moment, probably an illegal home visit fake conversation with an accomplice, made the difference. I sat by the landline. I didn't just tell Vernon to get me out of here. I told him to go after them. "Vernon," I said into the phone, "when you come, take a detective from the local police department with you. Before I leave, I want to make sure the neighbors outside my house, especially Mrs. Chen, have recordings. I'll need them." "I'm on it, Walter. I'll be there in 5 minutes. Police and notices are on the way. One thing I ask of you, don't talk to anyone. Don't sign any paperwork. Stay put and wait. They'll feel the heat." At that moment, a staff member entered the room. "Mr. Drummond, I'll give you a guide for your room and show you tonight's dinner menu." "Thank you," I said, continuing to play the old senile role. "I think I'm a bit tired. May I be left alone for now?" The staff member nodded and left. I heard the lock click behind him, but this time, I was the one who had locked the door. They were playing by my rules. This was the beginning of their end. Now it was your turn to get Walter Drummond legally out of Sunset Gardens as soon as possible, and to start the process of holding Craig and Bridget financially and criminally accountable. 6 months later, I sat in the courtroom for the final criminal trial. Those 6 months were spent not only on legal action but rebuilding my life. I changed the locks on my house, turned away contractors who came to renovate Eleanor's bathroom, and personally showed my neighbors documents proving my mental fitness. I returned to my role on the Brookfield Library Board. I continued to play golf every Thursday, but the ache inside me had not eased. The destruction caused by Craig's betrayal was far greater than the money I had spent on my estate. The courtroom was full. Bridget and Craig sat at the table in orange prison uniforms. Bridget's manicured nails were gone, and the shame in Craig's eyes had deepened. Prosecutor Margaret Knox was not emotional in her closing. She simply presented the facts: security camera footage, forged documents, confessions from the lawyer Mitchell Frost, who prepared the power of attorney, and Dr. Crow's cooperation in the federal investigation. "Your Honor," Knox said, her voice sharp and ringing, "this case is an attempt by greed to destroy a man's honor, autonomy, and lifetime savings. The defendants didn't just want to put Walter Drummond aside, they sought to remove him. Their actions are not only fraud, but a crime committed against the most fundamental family bonds." When the defense attorneys spoke, both searched for mitigating factors: Craig's debts, Bridget's misguided love arguments, meaning she argued that Walter loved money. Judge Rothman, who had been quiet throughout the proceedings, now leaned forward to read the verdict. "Defendants Craig Drummond and Bridget Drummond. This court finds you guilty of conspiracy to abuse an elder, fraud, forgery, and unlawful detention." The judge paused, looked at Bridget over his glasses. "Miss Drummond, as the architect of the plan, you played an active role in every stage of the crime. You stole everything an elderly man trusted and damaged his reputation while doing so. Society must be protected from predators of this kind." The judge sentenced Bridget to 12 years in federal prison. Then his gaze shifted to Craig, whose face had gone completely pale. "Mr. Drummond, the duty of a son is to protect and support his father's life. Instead, you sold that duty to the lure of money. As an accountant, you know the line between lawful and unlawful very well. I hope that while you were emptying your father's safe, including your mother's ring, you also stripped your own conscience." Craig was sentenced to 8 years in prison. In addition to the criminal sentences, Vernon's civil suit also concluded swiftly. Damages: the court awarded me $3 million in total for emotional damages, wrongful detention, and attorney's fees. Assets: Craig and Bridget's house, cars, and all savings were frozen and subjected to the civil judgment. Inheritance: Vernon used a new legal provision to confirm that Craig was legally disqualified from inheritance rights due to these crimes. An extension of the Slayer rule in law. Craig and Bridget would never touch the millions they tried to steal from me. They had lost not only their freedom but their lives as they had known them. I stood in the courtroom. I looked at Vernon. He only nodded, as if to say, "Justice has been served, Walter." As I reached the door, I saw Craig approach me escorted by a federal officer. "Dad," he said, his voice breaking. "I swear to you, Bridget forced me." I turned to him. I looked into his eyes. There was pain, there was regret, but for me it was now foreign. "In my workshop, in Eleanor's art studio, the man who plans to build dwellings is not my son, Craig," I said. "You made your choice. I hope those 8 years teach you what a father means." I turned and walked away. At that moment, I felt no need to respond to Bridget's mocking message. My answer was now written in court records, in federal prison cells, and in my son's conscience. The best revenge was not simply winning. It was showing everyone how they destroyed themselves while trying to put me aside. This is a strong, satisfying, and instructive ending for Walter Drummond's story. It shows how justice was served not only criminally, but also within family and spirit. The trials proceeded quickly. The evidence was overwhelming. Security camera footage, faces blurred to protect privacy, was aired on local news channels. The story became a cautionary tale in New England about elder abuse and family betrayal. Bridget's trial was first. Her unshaken composure cracked after a decade. The judge read the sentence: conspiracy to abuse an elder, fraud, forgery, and theft, 18 years without parole. When it became clear that the financial motivation elder abuse exceeded $1 million, she finally broke down. There were no more cold smiles, only the stark reality of nearly 20 years in federal prison. Craig admitted his crime and received an 8-year sentence in exchange for testifying against Bridget. He confessed everything: how she manipulated him, how she convinced him the old man was mentally unwell even though he wasn't. But manipulation was not an excuse for betrayal. Judge Rothman addressed Craig. "Mr. Drummond, you had a father who loved you and would have helped if you had asked. Instead, you chose greed over family. That choice will define the rest of your life." Other accomplices were punished as well. Fake Dr. Nathaniel Crow received 12 years and lost his medical license permanently. Corrupt lawyer Mitchell Frost got 15 years and was disbarred. The investigation revealed these people had targeted 7 other elderly victims across New England. My case exposed their entire operation. After the verdict, Craig's ex-wife Patricia approached me outside the courthouse. After Craig's arrest, she gained full custody of Taylor and Madison. The children wanted to see their grandfather and knew I was a victim, not a traitor as Bridget had tried to paint me. I hugged her. "Bring them Sunday. I'll make Eleanor's blueberry pancakes." The financial outcomes were finalized as well. Vernon's civil suits resulted in full restitution. Every penny Craig and Bridget took or attempted to take was returned, plus damages. Their house was sold. Proceeds used to pay attorney fees and compensate the other victims targeted by their accomplices. I immediately changed my will. All my assets were placed into a trust managed by Vernon, until Taylor and Madison turned 30. The money would be available for education and living expenses, but the bulk remained protected until they were old enough to use it wisely. Craig would receive nothing beyond a letter explaining that inheritance is not a right, but a gift that requires trust. The memories of my house in Brookfield had been stained by Bridget's rifling through Eleanor's belongings and Craig emptying my safe. I no longer felt it as my home. I sold it to a young family of 3 who, I hoped, would restore it to what Eleanor and I once were. The lake house became my main residence. Vernon and I now go fishing every weekend. The man who installed my security system told me, "Your case became legendary in our industry. We use it as an example that good security is not paranoia but preparation." I replied, "The $1,500 cameras were my best investment. They exposed not only my money, but the true nature of people I thought I knew." A year later, I received a letter from Craig in prison. I keep it, unopened, in a drawer with the other 17 he sent. Maybe one day I'll read them, but today is not that day. Forgiveness is not forgetting. Some betrayals run too deep to ever heal. Taylor and Madison visit every summer now. We spend hours in the workshop tinkering with model trains, the very space Bridget once planned to tear down for her luxury apartments. I teach them about investments, the value of work, and the importance of earning rather than taking. But above all, I teach them how fragile trust is, how it must be guarded with care, and how easily it can be lost. Last month, Madison asked me, "Grandpa, why did Dad try to hurt you?" I told her as gently as I could, sometimes people let greed cloud their judgment. They forget that family is worth more than money. "Your father forgot that," I said. "But you don't have to make the same mistake." This Thanksgiving, we gathered at the lake house. Patricia helped in the kitchen while the kids set the table. When we finally sat down, Madison raised her glass of apple juice and said, "To Grandpa for teaching us that standing up for yourself is always worth it." We raised our glasses, and for the first time since Eleanor passed, the house felt like home again. Not because of the money Bridget failed to steal, but because of the family that chose love over greed. On my desk now hangs not Bridget's mugshot, as I once imagined, but a photograph of Eleanor and me on our wedding day. Beneath it, a small brass plaque reads, "Trust is earned drop by drop, but lost by the bucket." My story became a warning for others, but also a reminder that justice can prevail when you refuse to be a victim. I'm 73 now, living proof that age doesn't mean weakness, that technology can protect as much as it threatens, and that the best inheritance you can leave your grandchildren isn't wealth. It's the knowledge that their grandfather stood tall when it mattered most.